The German Shepherd launches. 90 pounds of muscle and fury explode across the red dirt, kicking up a cloud that hangs in the Texas heat like smoke from a brush fire. The dog's teeth flash white against black gums, a growl ripping from its throat that sounds less like an animal and more like a warning from something ancient and broken. Dr. Eli Cross does not run. He stands in the center of the corral, white veterinary coat billowing behind him like a surrender flag that means nothing to the beast charging at him. His boots stay planted in the rust-colored earth. His weathered canvas backpack hangs heavy on his right shoulder. A stethoscope glints silver against his blue scrubs, catching the late afternoon sun that bleeds through the sprawling oak trees overhead. The ranchers pressed against the wooden fence suck in their breath as one. 5 men. 5 witnesses to what they are certain will be a mauling. Marcus Webb, the ranch foreman, grips the top plank so hard his knuckles go pale. Darnell shifts his weight and looks away. The youngest hand, a kid named Jerome, barely out of high school, whispers something that sounds like a prayer. The dog closes the distance in 3 heartbeats. 20 feet, 10 feet, 5. Eli moves. Not backward, not away. He sidesteps left with a precision that speaks of training most people never receive, and certainly never expect from a 53-year-old veterinarian with gray streaking through his beard. The shepherd's jaws snap shut on empty air, the crack of teeth meeting teeth echoing across the corral like a gunshot. The dog skids in the dirt, wheels around, and faces the man again. "You done?" Eli asks. His voice carries no fear, no anger, just a question, flat and calm, like he is asking about the weather. Rex answers with another lunge. This time Eli does not move at all. He drops to one knee, lowering himself closer to the earth, making himself smaller, less threatening. The dog pulls up short 3 feet away, confused by prey that does not act like prey. Its haunches quiver with barely contained violence. Saliva drips from exposed canines. The growl continues, a constant rumble that vibrates through the ground itself. "He gonna die," Darnell says from the fence. "That fool gonna die right in front of us." Marcus does not respond. His eyes stay locked on the strange scene unfolding before him. He has owned this ranch for 31 years. He has seen stallions break men's spines. He has seen bulls gore farmhands into early graves. But he has never seen anything like this. A man choosing to kneel before a monster. The silence stretches. 1 minute, 2. The only sounds are the dog's breathing and the creak of the wooden fence as the ranch hands lean forward, unable to look away from what feels inevitable. Eli reaches slowly toward his backpack. Rex's growl intensifies. The muscles in his shoulders bunch, preparing for another attack. Every man at the fence tenses. Eli's hand emerges holding a small piece of dried meat. He does not offer it, does not extend his arm toward the dog. He simply places it in the dirt between them and withdraws his hand. Then he waits. The sun sinks lower, painting the corral in shades of amber and rust. Rex does not move toward the food. His eyes never leave Eli's face, searching for the trick, the trap, the betrayal that every human has eventually brought him. His body remains coiled tight as a spring. Eli nods once, as if confirming something to himself. "You've been hurt," he says quietly. "Not just your body. Something inside you got broken and nobody knew how to fix it. Nobody even tried to understand." The words hang in the dusty air. For just a moment, the growling stops. It is barely a second, a heartbeat of silence. But Marcus catches it from the fence, and his grip loosens slightly on the wooden plank. In 31 years, he has never heard Rex go quiet for anyone. Then the moment passes. Rex backs away, Circling to the far side of the corral, his gaze still fixed on this stranger who refuses to act like all the others. He does not attack again, but he does not come closer either. Eli rises slowly to his feet, his knees protesting after holding the crouch for so long. He does not brush the red dirt from his coat. He does not look at the ranch hands gaping at him from the fence. He just watches Rex settle into the shadow beneath the largest oak tree, still growling, still dangerous, still utterly alone. "That's the dog that killed a man last spring," Marcus calls out. "County wants him destroyed. You got 1 week before they send someone to do it. 1 week, Doc." Eli finally turns to face the foreman. His eyes are gray, the color of storm clouds rolling in from the west. And there is something in them that Marcus cannot quite read. Pain, maybe, or recognition. 1 week, Eli repeats. He shoulders his backpack and walks toward the gate, passing through the gathering of stunned ranch hands without a word. His boots leave prints in the red dirt that the evening wind will erase within the hour. Behind him, Rex watches from the shadows, and for reasons the dog cannot understand, he does not look away until the man in the white coat disappears around the corner of the barn. Now here is where this story takes a turn that nobody expected. What would you do if you had 7 days to save a creature everyone else had given up on? What if the only way to reach him was to face something broken in yourself? If this story already has you hooked, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss what happens next. Because what Dr. Eli Cross discovers about Rex will change everything. And the secret buried in that dog's past? It is going to shatter your heart before this is over. The ranch hands would talk about that first day for years to come. They would argue about what they saw, what it meant, whether the new veterinarian was brave or simply insane. But none of them knew the truth yet. None of them knew why Eli had really come, and none of them suspected that the wild German shepherd prowling the corral carried a secret that connected him to Eli in ways that defied explanation. 7 days. That is all Eli had been given. But as he climbed into his truck and caught one final glimpse of Rex in his side mirror, he knew something with absolute certainty. This was never really about saving the dog. 3 years earlier, Rex had a different name. The memory plays like a film reel in the minds of those who knew him then. Before the ranch, before the attacks, before he became the monster that children in town whispered about like a ghost story. His name was Shadow. Lucas Hawk chose that name the day a scrawny German shepherd puppy followed him home from the base in Afghanistan, slipping through the compound gates like smoke, like something that belonged more to the darkness than the light. The other soldiers laughed at the young sergeant for keeping a local stray. Dogs in that part of the world carried disease, they said. Carried fleas and worse. Why bother with an animal when survival was already hard enough? Lucas never answered them. He just fed the puppy scraps from his rations and let him sleep at the foot of his cot. Within 6 months, Shadow was no longer scrawny. He grew into 80 pounds of muscle and instinct, with ears that stood at attention and eyes that tracked movement in the peripheral darkness, where enemies liked to hide. The same soldiers who laughed at Lucas began requesting to patrol with him, because Shadow could smell an ambush from 200 yards out. He could hear footsteps that human ears would never catch. The dog saved lives, again and again. But it was his bond with Lucas that became legendary among the unit. They moved together like one organism, the soldier and his shadow. Lucas never needed a leash or a command. A gesture, a glance, a slight shift in body weight, and Shadow understood. They communicated in a language older than words, built on trust that neither of them had ever experienced with another living creature. Lucas had grown up in foster care. 17 different homes before he turned 18. 17 different families who looked at him and saw a problem to be managed, not a child to be loved. He learned early that people leave. People give up. People decide you are too much trouble and sign the papers that send you somewhere else. Shadow never left. Through firefights and mortar attacks, through the boredom of base life and the terror of night raids, the dog stayed pressed against Lucas's leg. When Lucas woke screaming from nightmares about things he could never tell anyone, Shadow would crawl onto the narrow cot and lay his head on the soldier's chest until the trembling stopped. They served together for 4 years. Then came the day that ended everything. The convoy was returning from a routine supply run when the first explosion tore through the lead vehicle. Lucas's truck flipped twice before landing on its side in a drainage ditch. The world became a blur of dust and blood, and the high-pitched ringing that meant his eardrums had nearly ruptured. Shadow was thrown clear of the wreck. When the dog regained his footing, he found Lucas pinned beneath the overturned truck, his legs crushed under metal that would take rescue crews hours to cut through. The insurgents were moving in from the hills. Lucas could see them through the cracked windshield, shadows against the bright Afghan sky, weapons raised. He knew he was going to die. But not Shadow. Lucas used the last of his strength to shove the dog away, to scream at him to run, to escape, to survive. Shadow refused. He planted himself between Lucas and the approaching enemy, teeth bared, ready to fight until his last breath. The gunfire started. Shadow was hit twice in the shoulder before the medevac helicopter arrived, its mounted weapons driving the attackers back into the hills. The rescue team pulled Lucas from the wreckage and loaded him onto a stretcher. He died on the helicopter. His heart stopped 3 times on the flight to the field hospital. 3 times the medics brought him back. But the damage was done. Internal bleeding, spinal trauma. The Lucas who woke up 2 weeks later in Germany was not the same man who had fallen asleep with a loyal dog at his feet. He could not walk. The military doctors explained it gently, then firmly, then with the kind of bureaucratic detachment that comes from delivering bad news too many times. Sergeant Lucas Hawk would spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. His service was over. His career was finished. And Shadow. The dog had been flown to a veterinary facility in Kuwait, where surgeons removed the bullets from his shoulder and declared him fit for adoption. Army regulations did not allow Lucas to keep him. Military working dogs were property of the United States government, and Shadow had never been officially registered. He was a stray who had attached himself to a soldier, and now that soldier was being discharged. Lucas fought for 3 months to bring Shadow home. He filed paperwork. He contacted congressmen. He begged everyone who would listen. And finally, through a combination of luck and stubbornness, he won. Shadow was flown to Texas, where Lucas had bought a small piece of land with his disability payments. For 2 years, they healed together. Lucas learned to navigate his wheelchair across uneven ground. Shadow learned to walk without a limp. They developed new routines, new rhythms, a new version of the partnership they had built in a war zone. Lucas's nightmares never fully stopped, but they came less often when Shadow slept beside his bed. Then came the night of the fire. The investigators would later rule it an electrical fault. Old wiring in an old house that Lucas had never gotten around to fixing. The flame started in the walls and spread faster than anyone could have predicted. Lucas did not make it out. His wheelchair got stuck on the threshold of the back door. The smoke was too thick to see. By the time the volunteer fire department arrived, the house was fully engulfed. They found Shadow sitting in the front yard, howling. The sound carried for miles across the flat Texas landscape. A sound of grief so pure and terrible that the firefighters would remember it for the rest of their lives. The dog had tried to drag Lucas from the flames. His muzzle was burned, his paws were blistered, but he had not been strong enough. He had failed the only person who ever loved him. The county animal shelter took Shadow in. They treated his wounds and posted his picture online, hoping someone would adopt the German Shepherd with the sad eyes and the military bearing. No one came. A month passed. Then 2. The shelter was overcrowded, and decisions had to be made. That was when Marcus Webb stepped in. He needed a guard dog for his ranch, and the shelter workers assured him that Shadow had been trained for protection work overseas. What they did not mention was the change that had come over the dog since Lucas's death. The withdrawal, the sudden bursts of aggression, the way he stared at every human like they might be the next one to abandon him. Marcus renamed him Rex and put him to work. Within a week, the first ranch hand came back from the corral with bite marks on his arm. Within a month, no one could enter Rex's enclosure without risking serious injury. Within a year, the attacks had escalated to the point where Marcus kept the dog isolated in the far corner of the property, fed through a slot in the fence, touched by no one. The people in town called him a monster. But Rex was not a monster. He was a soldier who had lost his purpose, a loyal heart that had been shattered beyond recognition, a creature drowning in grief so deep that the only language he had left was violence. And somewhere, in whatever part of him still remembered the man who named him Shadow, he was waiting for someone who would not leave. But the question that haunted those dusty ranch lands was simple and terrible, and had no easy answer. After everything Rex had suffered, after every betrayal and loss, could any living soul actually reach him? Or had the fire that took Lucas also burned away the last piece of shadow that remained? Eli had not slept in 37 hours. The motel room on the outskirts of town smelled like mildew and decades of cigarette smoke that no amount of cleaning could erase. The mattress sagged in the middle. The air conditioning unit rattled and wheezed, but produced nothing resembling cool air. Through the thin walls, he could hear a television playing a game show, the audience laughter canned and hollow. None of it mattered. He sat on the edge of the bed with a letter in his hands. The paper was soft from being folded and unfolded 100 times, the creases threatening to tear apart along the lines. The handwriting belonged to a dead man. Lucas Hawk's handwriting. Eli had served with Lucas's unit for 18 months in Afghanistan. He was the veterinarian who treated Shadow's wounds after firefights, who checked the dog's teeth and heart and hips during routine examinations. He was also the one who held Lucas's hand during those long nights after the convoy attack, when the young sergeant was learning that his legs would never work again. They had become something like friends, not the easy friendship of beers and football games. Something harder, something forged in shared silence and the unspoken understanding that war changes everyone who touches it. Lucas never talked about his past. Eli never talked about his own demons. But they recognized something in each other. 2 men carrying weight that would crush most people. Then Eli left the service, and they lost touch. He moved back to Chicago, tried to rebuild a civilian practice, married a woman named Denise who loved him in ways he did not know how to receive, had a daughter named Maya who looked at him like he hung the moon. For 5 years, he pretended to be the man his family deserved. Then the nightmares started again. The faces of the soldiers he could not save. The animals he had to put down because their wounds were too severe. The sound of helicopters and gunfire and screaming that would jolt him awake at 3 in the morning, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst through his ribs. Denise tried to help. She found therapists, suggested medications, held him through the worst of it. But Eli did something that shamed him more than anything he had done in the war. He pushed her away, slowly at first, then faster. He stayed late at the clinic. He slept on the couch to avoid disturbing her. He stopped talking about anything that mattered. And when she finally looked at him with tears streaming down her face and asked what happened to the man she married, he had no answer to give her. The divorce was finalized 8 months ago. Maya, now 12 years old, lived with her mother in the suburbs. Eli saw her every other weekend, but the distance between them grew with each visit. She was becoming a stranger to him, a beautiful, brilliant stranger who reminded him of everything he had failed to protect. The letter from Lucas arrived 3 weeks after the divorce papers were signed. It was dated 2 years earlier, written before the fire, mailed to an old address that had been forwarded multiple times before finally reaching him. Lucas must have known his life was fragile. Must have sensed that his luck was running out. Because the letter read like a goodbye. Eli's eyes moved across the familiar words again. Lucas wrote about Shadow, about the bond they shared, about his fear that something would happen to him and the dog would be left alone. He asked Eli for a promise. If Shadow ever needed help, if he ever ended up somewhere that could not understand him, would Eli come? Eli had not answered the letter. He told himself he did not know what to say. Told himself he would write back when his own life was less chaotic. Told himself 100 lies that made it easier to ignore the plea from a friend who had already lost so much. Now Lucas was dead, and Shadow had become Rex, and the county was going to destroy the dog in 7 days. Eli set the letter on the nightstand and pressed his palms against his eyes until colors bloomed in the darkness. The guilt was a physical weight in his chest, making it hard to breathe. He had failed Denise. He had failed Maya. And he had failed Lucas by staying silent when his friend needed him most. He would not fail Shadow. That thought was the only thing keeping him upright. The only thing that had driven him 1,200 miles from Chicago to this dusty corner of Texas. The only thing that mattered anymore. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Maya. 3 words that simultaneously broke his heart and gave him a reason to keep going. "Miss you, Dad." Eli typed back quickly. "Miss you too, baby girl. I'm working on something important. I'll explain when I can." He did not expect a response, and he did not get one. Maya had learned early not to expect too much from him. That was his fault too. The game show laughter filtered through the walls again. Eli stood up and walked to the window. Through the grimy glass, he could see the lights of the town in the distance, small and scattered like stars that had fallen too close to Earth. Somewhere out there, Rex was pacing the perimeter of his enclosure, growling at shadows, waiting for the death that was coming for him. 6 days now. The clock was already ticking. Eli thought about the moment in the corral when Rex had stopped growling. That single second of silence. He had seen something in the dog's eyes that no one else on that ranch could have recognized. He had seen himself. A creature so battered by loss that violence felt like the only protection left. A soul convinced that letting anyone close would only lead to more pain. A survivor who had forgotten that survival was not the same as living. Tomorrow, Eli would return to the ranch. He would face Rex again and again and again, for as many hours as it took. He would be patient when patience felt impossible. He would be present when every instinct screamed at him to run. Because this was not just about saving a dog. This was about proving that broken things could be healed. That loyalty did not have to die with the one you loved. That redemption existed for those who had given up on deserving it. Eli turned away from the window and lay down on the sagging mattress. Sleep would not come easy tonight. The nightmares would find him eventually, as they always did. But for the first time in months, he had something to wake up for. And somewhere across town, in the shadow of a sprawling oak tree, Rex lifted his head and stared at the moon. The growl had faded to something quieter. Not peace, not yet. But perhaps the first faint stirring of something that had been dormant for far too long. The question that hung in the warm Texas night was whether either of them was ready for what came next. Because Eli carried a secret of his own. A truth about the night Lucas died that he had never told anyone. A truth that, if Rex ever discovered it, would either destroy them both or set them free. The second day began with blood. Eli ducked too slowly. Rex's teeth caught the sleeve of his white coat and tore through the fabric, grazing the skin beneath. A thin line of red appeared on his forearm, bright against his sun-darkened skin. The pain was sharp and immediate, but Eli did not cry out. He stepped back, assessed the wound, kept his eyes locked on the dog. Rex circled to the left, dust rising around his paws, his entire body vibrating with the same barely contained violence that had made him legendary on this ranch. The morning sun had just crested the tree line, throwing long shadows across the corral. The heat was already building toward brutal. Marcus leaned against the fence, arms crossed, face unreadable. Behind him, the same 5 ranch hands from yesterday had gathered to watch. Word had spread overnight. The crazy vet was back, and this time he was getting what he deserved. "You should let us bandage that," Marcus called out. Eli shook his head without looking away from Rex. "Later. Stubborn fool gonna bleed out in my corral." "I've bled worse." That much was true. The scars hidden beneath Eli's clothes told stories that would keep these men awake at night. Shrapnel wounds from a mortar attack near Kandahar, a knife slash across his ribs from a confrontation that still appeared in his nightmares. Burns on his left shoulder from an explosion that killed 3 soldiers standing beside him. This scratch from Rex was nothing. But the dog did not know that. Rex watched the blood seep through the torn fabric with an intensity that made the ranch hands shift nervously. Predators were drawn to blood. It triggered something primal, something ancient and hungry. Eli knelt down again. The same position from yesterday. Low to the ground, non-threatening, his wounded arm rested on his knee, the blood clearly visible. An offering of vulnerability that went against every survival instinct a person could possess. "I'm not afraid of you," Eli said quietly, "and I'm not leaving." Rex's growl deepened, but he did not charge. His eyes flicked between Eli's face and the blood, confusion evident in the tilt of his massive head. This human was not acting right. Prey ran. Prey screamed. Prey fought back with sticks and ropes and the cruel tools that Rex had learned to associate with pain. This one just knelt there, bleeding, waiting. The minutes stretched like taffy. Darnell, watching from the fence, checked his phone. 30 minutes had passed since Eli entered the corral. 30 minutes of circling and growling and that single explosive moment when teeth met flesh. The tension was exhausting just to witness. "He could go all day like this," Jerome whispered. "The dog, I mean. Seen him pace that perimeter for 12 hours straight once." Marcus grunted. "And the doc?" No one had an answer. Eli reached into his pocket with his uninjured hand. Rex tensed immediately, hindquarters lowering, preparing to spring. But what emerged was not a weapon, not a leash, not any of the things that Rex had learned to expect from the hands that reached toward him. It was a photograph. Eli placed it in the dirt between them, just as he had placed the dried meat yesterday. Then he withdrew his hand and waited. Rex did not move closer, but his head tilted further. The growl subsided to a low rumble, curiosity briefly winning against aggression. From this distance, the dog could not see what the photograph showed. But something about the gesture itself seemed to register. "That's Lucas," Eli said. "You're Lucas, the man who found you in Afghanistan, the man who fought for you when nobody else would." The name landed like a stone in still water. Rex's ears twitched. His body remained tense, but something shifted in his eyes. Recognition? Memory? Or just the ghost of a word he had not heard spoken in years? "He was my friend too," Eli continued. "I knew him before you did. Treated your wounds after that ambush in Helmand Province, remember? You bit me then too, right through my glove. Left a scar I still have." Eli held up his right hand, showing an old white mark across the webbing between thumb and forefinger. "You were protecting Lucas. He was unconscious on the table, and you thought I was going to hurt him. So you bit me. And when I didn't hit you back, when I just kept working on cleaning his wound, you let go." Rex stopped circling, his paws planted in the red dirt, and for the first time since Eli arrived at this ranch, the dog stood completely still. The growl continued, but softer now, almost uncertain. "You remembered that I didn't hurt you," Eli said. "Somewhere in there, past all this anger and fear, you remember? And I need you to remember something else. I need you to remember that Lucas loved you more than anything on this earth. And he asked me to take care of you if anything ever happened to him." Eli's voice cracked on the last words. The ranch hands exchanged glances. Even Marcus straightened slightly against the fence, caught off guard by the raw emotion bleeding through the veterinarian's calm exterior. "I failed him," Eli said. "I got his letter too late. I wasn't there when the fire happened. I wasn't there to save him, and I wasn't there to save you. But I'm here now, and I'm not going to fail either of you again." He reached toward the photograph in the dirt. Rex lunged, but this time, something was different. The dog's teeth did not connect. At the last moment, Rex pulled up short, his muzzle inches from Eli's outstretched fingers. His breath was hot and wet against Eli's skin. His eyes bore into the vet's with an intensity that felt almost human. Eli did not move. His hand stayed extended. His gaze stayed locked with Rex's. The blood from his wounded arm dripped slowly onto the ground, mixing with the dust. "I know you're still in there, Shadow," Eli whispered. "I know you remember what it felt like to trust someone, to love someone, to believe that not everyone leaves." The standoff lasted an eternity compressed into seconds. Then Rex backed away. He retreated to his usual spot beneath the oak tree, his eyes never leaving Eli's face. But he did not growl. He did not snarl. He simply watched with an expression that might have been exhaustion, or might have been the first tiny crack in the armor he had built around himself. Eli slowly picked up the photograph. It showed Lucas in his wheelchair, Shadow's head resting on his lap, both of them caught mid-laugh in the golden light of a Texas afternoon. Someone had written on the back, in Lucas's handwriting, "The only family I need." Eli slipped it back into his pocket and rose to his feet. His arm throbbed. His knees ached from kneeling so long. His heart felt like it had been put through a wringer. But as he walked toward the gate, he allowed himself a small moment of hope. "Same time tomorrow," Marcus said as Eli passed through the fence. "Earlier, dawn. The cooler air will help him think." Marcus shook his head slowly. "You actually believe you can reach that animal?" Eli stopped and turned to face the foreman. The sun was behind him now, casting his features in shadow, making it hard to read his expression. "That animal saved more lives in Afghanistan than most people will save in a lifetime. He deserves someone willing to try." He walked toward his truck without waiting for a response. Behind him, Rex watched from the shadows. And deep in the part of his mind that still remembered soft hands and gentle words and the sound of his real name, something stirred, something that had not moved in years. But even as hope flickered in that dusty corral, a darker truth remained buried. Because Eli had not told the whole story. He had not told Rex about the phone call he received the night of the fire. The call from Lucas, desperate and afraid, asking for help that Eli did not provide. That secret would have to come out eventually. And when it did, everything would change. Day 4. Everything was about to shift. Eli arrived at the ranch before the sun broke the horizon. The world existed in shades of gray and purple, the air still cool enough to carry the scent of mesquite and distant rain. His wounded arm had been properly bandaged now, the white gauze visible beneath his rolled-up sleeve. The scratch was healing clean, no sign of infection. Rex was already waiting. The dog stood in the center of the corral, not pacing, not prowling, just standing in the pre-dawn darkness with his head turned toward the gate. As if he had known Eli would come early. As if he had been anticipating this moment. Marcus had given Eli a key to the property, allowing him access without waiting for the ranch hands to arrive. It meant working alone. No backup. No one to pull him out if Rex decided today was the day to finish what he started. Eli did not hesitate. He walked through the gate and closed it behind him, the click of the latch impossibly loud in the quiet morning. Rex's ears tracked the sound. His body remained still, but energy coiled beneath his dark fur like lightning waiting to strike. "Good morning, Shadow," Eli said. He had started using the old name exclusively. Every time he spoke it, Rex's reaction changed slightly. Less aggression, more attention. The name was a key, and Eli was slowly finding the lock it belonged to. This morning, he had brought something different. The military harness was heavier than he remembered. Olive green canvas, faded and worn, with brass buckles that had long since lost their shine. Lucas's name was still visible on a patch stitched to the side, the letters barely legible after years of use. Eli had driven 4 hours to retrieve it from a storage facility in San Antonio. The shelter had kept Lucas's belongings after the fire, waiting for next of kin who never came. When Eli showed the letter and explained who he was, they released everything to him. The harness smelled like smoke and time and something underneath that Eli could not identify, but that made his chest ache with grief. Rex smelled it too. The dog's nostrils flared the moment Eli pulled the harness from his backpack. His entire body went rigid, and for a terrible instant, Eli thought he had made a catastrophic mistake. The memories associated with that scent could trigger rage just as easily as recognition. Rex let out a sound Eli had never heard before. Not a growl, not a bark. Something closer to a whine, high and keening, emanating from deep in his chest. The dog's legs trembled. His head dropped low, almost touching the ground. "I know," Eli said softly. "I know, boy. I miss him too." He knelt down in the dirt, the familiar position that had become their ritual over the past 4 days. But this time, he held the harness out in front of him, letting it dangle from his fingers where Rex could see it clearly. This was his. This was yours once upon a time. Back when things made sense. Back when you knew who you were and what you were fighting for. Rex took a step forward, then another. His movements were hesitant, uncertain, nothing like the explosive charges of the previous days. He approached Eli with the caution of a creature who desperately wanted something, but had learned that wanting led to pain. Eli stayed perfectly still. Rex stopped 3 feet away. His nose extended toward the harness, sniffing deeply, drinking in the scent of the man who had been everything to him. His whole body shook with the force of whatever was happening inside him. Then he did something extraordinary. Rex lay down. His belly touched the red dirt. His legs stretched out in front of him. His head rested on his paws, and his eyes looked up at Eli with an expression that defied description. Grief and hope and terror and something that might have been the first fragile thread of trust. "Good boy," Eli breathed. "Good boy, Shadow. That's it. That's all I needed to see." He did not move toward the dog, did not try to touch him or put the harness on him. That would come later, if it came at all. For now, this moment was enough. This small miracle of a broken animal choosing to lower his defenses. The sun crept over the horizon, spilling gold across the corral. Eli and Rex stayed frozen in that tableau as the light transformed the world around them. Shadows retreated. Colors emerged. The heat began its slow assault on the Texas landscape. Then Eli noticed something he had missed before. Rex's fur had parted slightly where he lay, revealing a patch of skin on his side. There was a scar there, old and healed, shaped like a starburst. Eli recognized it immediately. A bullet wound. But that was not what made his blood run cold. Beside the bullet scar was another mark, smaller, deliberate. Not a wound from combat, but something that had been done to the dog on purpose. A brand. Someone had burned a symbol into Rex's flesh, a circle with a line through it, the mark of a military working dog that had been officially decommissioned, destroyed, erased from the records. Eli's mind raced. Shadow had never been registered with the military. He was a stray who followed Lucas home. There should not have been any official process to decommission him, which meant someone had branded him anyway. Someone who wanted to make sure this dog disappeared. "What did they do to you?" Eli whispered. Rex's eyes met his, and for just a moment, Eli could have sworn the dog was trying to answer. The sound of tires on gravel broke the spell. Eli looked toward the ranch entrance and saw an unfamiliar truck pulling up to the main house. Dark green, government plates. 2 men in suits climbed out, their posture radiating authority and purpose. Marcus emerged from the house to meet them. Even from this distance, Eli could see the tension in the foreman's shoulders. One of the suited men pointed toward the corral, toward Rex, toward Eli. The veterinarian rose slowly to his feet, his eyes moving between the government officials and the dog who had just shown him the first sign of trust. Something was very wrong here. Something beyond a county's desire to put down a dangerous animal. Rex stood up too, positioning himself slightly behind Eli, using the human as a shield. It was an instinctive move, the behavior of a trained protection dog, the behavior of a soldier. "Easy," Eli murmured. "Whatever this is, we face it together." The suited men started walking toward the corral, and in that moment, Eli understood that saving Rex had just become far more complicated than anyone had anticipated. Because those men were not from the county. The insignia on their truck told a different story entirely, They were from the Department of Defense, and they had not come to help. The taller government man reached for the corral gate. Rex exploded into motion, launching himself toward the fence with a ferocity that made even Eli stumble backward. The dog's teeth snapped inches from the man's fingers, forcing him to yank his hand away as if he had touched a hot stove. Saliva sprayed across the wooden planks. The growl that erupted from Rex's chest was primal, territorial, a warning that needed no translation. "Control that animal," the shorter agent barked. Eli stepped between Rex and the fence, his back to the dog, his eyes locked on the two men in suits. This close, he could read their badges. Department of Defense, K-9 Operations Division. Names he did not recognize. Faces that carried the cold efficiency of men who followed orders without asking questions. "This animal is under my care," Eli said. "You want to tell me why the DOD is interested in a ranch dog in rural Texas?" The taller agent, a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head and skin the color of dark coffee, pulled a folded document from his jacket pocket. His movements were deliberate, unhurried, the confidence of someone who knew the law was on his side. "Asset recovery," he said. "That dog is government property. Stolen from a military facility in Kuwait 3 years ago. We're here to take him back." Eli felt Rex press against his legs from behind. The dog's body vibrated with tension, but he did not attack again. He was using Eli as cover, trusting the human to handle this threat. That trust meant everything. "Stolen?" Eli shook his head. Shadow was never registered. He was a stray that Sergeant Lucas Hawk adopted off base. There's no paperwork claiming him as military property. The shorter agent smiled. It did not reach his eyes. "There is now." Marcus stepped forward from where he had been watching near the house. His boots crunched on the gravel, his weathered face tight with confusion and growing anger. "Hold on just a minute," the foreman said. "I bought this dog legal from the county shelter. Got the papers to prove it. Nobody said anything about government property." "The county made an error," the tall agent replied. "This animal was part of a classified program. His handler's death triggered a recovery protocol that, unfortunately, took longer than expected to execute. But we're here now, and we have authorization to take custody immediately." Eli's mind raced through the possibilities. A classified program. The brand on Rex's side, the bullet scars. None of it added up to a simple stray who followed a soldier home. "What program?" he demanded. The agents exchanged a glance. "That information is above your clearance level, Dr. Cross." The use of his name hit Eli like a physical blow. They knew who he was. They had done their research. This was not a random recovery mission. They had been tracking Rex, and now they were tracking the man, trying to save him. "I served 8 years as an Army veterinarian," Eli said slowly. "I held a top-secret clearance. I treated dogs from every special operations unit in the theater. And I never heard of any classified canine program that brands its animals like cattle." The tall agent's jaw tightened. "Your service record is noted and appreciated, but your clearance expired when you separated. This matter doesn't concern you. It concerns me when you're trying to take a dog that I promised a dying friend I would protect." Silence fell over the ranch. The morning sun had risen fully now, baking the red dirt and casting harsh shadows across the corral. Rex's growl had subsided to a low rumble, constant and threatening, like distant thunder that refused to move on. The shorter agent took a step forward, his hand moving toward his hip where a tranquilizer gun was holstered. Eli saw the movement and shifted his weight, preparing to intervene. "Don't," Eli warned. "You trank him now. In this state, his heart might give out. He's been under extreme stress for years. Any chemical restraint could kill him. The agent hesitated. "He's lying," the tall one said. "He's a vet, not a cardiologist." "Actually, I specialized in cardiac function during my residency, specifically in working dogs exposed to combat trauma. You want to take that risk? You want to explain to your superiors why you killed a classified asset in the middle of a civilian ranch?" Another long pause. Marcus cleared his throat. "Gentlemen, I think we all need to calm down. Whatever paperwork you have, whatever claims you're making, this ain't the time or place. The county already set a date for this dog, 1 week from first contact. That gives the doc here 3 more days to work with him. After that, the county decides what happens." "The county's authority has been superseded," the short agent said. "Not yet, it hasn't." Marcus pulled out his phone. "I got the sheriff on speed dial. Good friend of mine. Served in Vietnam together. You want to make this official? We can make it official. But something tells me you'd rather handle this quiet." The tension stretched like a wire about to snap. Rex pressed harder against Eli's legs. The dog was trembling now, not from fear, but from the effort of restraining himself. Every instinct in his battle-trained body was screaming at him to attack, to protect, to eliminate the threat. But something was holding him back. Trust. Fragile and new and easily broken, but there. The tall agent finally nodded. 3 days. Then we return with federal marshals and proper authorization. This animal will be coming with us, one way or another. He turned and walked back toward the government truck. The shorter agent lingered for a moment, his eyes moving between Eli and Rex with an expression that was impossible to read. "You're making a mistake, Doctor," he said quietly. "You don't know what that dog is capable of, what he was designed to do." "I know exactly what he's capable of," Eli replied. "I've seen it. And I've also seen what he could become if someone gave him the chance." The agent shook his head slowly and followed his partner. The truck's engine roared to life. Gravel sprayed as it pulled away, disappearing down the long driveway toward the main road. Eli watched until it vanished from sight, then turned to face Marcus. "Designed?" the foreman asked. What the hell did he mean by designed? Eli looked down at Rex. The dog had finally stopped trembling. His eyes met Eli's with an intensity that felt almost human. "I don't know yet," Eli admitted, "but I'm going to find out." He knelt down beside Rex, ignoring the instinctive flinch that the dog could not quite suppress. Gently, carefully, he parted the fur on Rex's side to reveal the brand once more. The circle with the line through it. He had seen that symbol before, years ago in a classified briefing that he was never supposed to remember. A program so secret that even mentioning its name could result in court-martial. Project Cerberus, the military's attempt to create the perfect combat dog. Enhanced training, experimental conditioning. Animals pushed beyond their natural limits to become weapons. Most of the dogs had been destroyed when the program was shut down. Too unstable, too dangerous, too broken by what had been done to them. But one had escaped. One had followed a kind soldier home and pretended to be an ordinary stray. One had buried his true nature so deep that even he might have forgotten what he was. Eli looked into Rex's eyes and saw the truth he had been avoiding since the moment he arrived at this ranch. He was not just trying to save a grieving dog. He was trying to save a weapon that the government had never stopped hunting. And now, with only 3 days left, the question became terrifyingly simple. Could Eli heal Rex before the DOD returned to claim him? Or would the demons of Project Cerberus prove stronger than any bond they could build? Day 5 shattered everything. Eli arrived at the ranch in the gray hour before dawn, the same as every morning. His truck's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the wooden fence posts and the ancient oak trees that stood guard over the property. Everything looked exactly as it had the day before. Then he heard the screaming. He killed the engine and ran. The sounds led him to the far side of the corral, past the main enclosure, toward a storage shed that Marcus used for equipment and feed. The screaming had stopped by the time he reached it, replaced by something worse. Sobbing, high-pitched, terrified. Jerome, the youngest ranch hand, was pressed against the shed wall, his arms wrapped around his body, blood soaking through his shirt from shoulder to elbow. His face was pale, his eyes wide with shock. Darnell crouched beside him, pressing a bandana against the wound. 20 feet away, Rex stood in the open doorway of the shed. His muzzle was red. "What happened?" Eli demanded. Darnell looked up, fury and fear warring in his expression. "Kid went to grab a bag of feed, didn't know the dog had gotten out. That monster tore into him before he could even scream." Eli's heart sank. He turned to face Rex. The dog's posture had changed completely from the tentative trust of yesterday morning. His body was low, coiled, the stance of a predator ready to strike. His eyes tracked Eli's movements with cold calculation. This was not Shadow. This was the weapon, the creature that Project Cerberus had tried to create. Something had triggered him during the night, stripped away the fragile progress they had made, and brought the soldier back to the surface. "Jerome." Eli kept his voice calm, steady. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough," Darnell answered for him. "Gonna need stitches, maybe surgery. That dog went for the throat first. Only reason the kid's alive is he got his arm up in time. Gone for the throat, combat training, eliminate the target with maximum efficiency." Rex had not attacked out of fear or territorial instinct. He had attacked to kill. The realization hit Eli like a punch to the gut. "Get him to the hospital," Eli said. "I'll handle Rex." "Handle him?" Darnell stood up, his fists clenched. "That dog needs to be put down. Today, right now. I don't care what the county says. I don't care what those government boys want. He's too dangerous." "Darnell." "No." The older man's voice cracked. "Jerome is 19 years old. He's got a mama who works 2 jobs to keep food on the table. You think she cares about your redemption story? You think she cares about saving some broken animal that just tried to murder her son?" Eli had no answer. Rex watched the confrontation without moving. His eyes flicked between the humans, assessing, calculating. Blood dripped from his muzzle onto the dusty ground. Marcus arrived in his pickup, alerted by the commotion. He took one look at Jerome's wound and the blood on Rex's face and reached for the rifle mounted in his truck's rear window. "Don't," Eli said. "Give me one good reason." "Because killing him won't undo what happened, and because I need to understand what triggered this." Marcus's finger hovered near the trigger. "Understanding doesn't mean a damn thing to that boy's family. It might mean everything." The foreman stared at Eli for a long moment. Then slowly, he lowered the rifle. "You've got until those government men come back. That's it. If you can't fix whatever's wrong with him by then, I'll save them the trouble." He helped Darnell load Jerome into the pickup. The young man was going into shock, his face gray, his breathing shallow. Eli watched them drive away, the cloud of dust hanging in the air like a judgment. Then he turned back to Rex. The dog had not moved. "What happened to you last night?" Eli asked quietly. "What brought all this back?" Rex's only response was a low growl, a sound that Eli had not heard in days. The trust they had built was gone, erased, replaced by the cold fury of an animal that had been trained to view every human as a potential enemy. Eli walked slowly toward the storage shed. Rex's growl intensified with each step, but he held his ground. He was protecting something. The interior of the shed was dim, lit only by the gray dawn filtering through gaps in the wooden walls. Feed bags lined one side. Tools hung from hooks on the other. And in the corner, half hidden beneath a tarp, Eli saw something that made his blood run cold. A military crate, standard issue, olive green, the kind used to transport equipment in war zones. Someone had stamped the lid with a serial number and a designation that Eli recognized immediately. K9 Unit, Project Cerberus, Handler, L. Hawk, Lucas's crate, from Afghanistan. Eli pulled back the tarp with shaking hands. The crate was open, its contents spilled across the floor. A leather muzzle, a set of training commands written in Lucas's handwriting, a vial of medication with a label that made Eli's stomach turn. Aggression Enhancement Protocol. They had drugged the dogs, chemically altered their brain chemistry to increase aggression and decrease fear responses. The perfect killing machines. And when the program was shut down, they had simply stopped administering the medication, leaving the animals to suffer through withdrawal alone. Shadow had been one of those dogs. Lucas must have kept the crate as evidence, proof of what had been done. And when he died, the crate ended up in storage, eventually making its way to this ranch where no one knew what it contained. Until last night. Something had drawn Rex to the shed. The familiar scent of the chemicals, maybe, or simply the instinct that this place held answers to questions he could not articulate. And when he found the vial, when he smelled the substance that had been used to twist his mind and steal his autonomy, something inside him broke. He had attacked Jerome not out of malice, but out of sheer traumatic reaction. Eli emerged from the shed holding the vial. Rex's growl cut off abruptly. The dog's eyes fixed on the small glass container with an expression that was heartbreakingly human. Fear. They did this to you, Eli said. They turned you into something you were never meant to be. And then they abandoned you when the experiment failed. Rex backed away, his tail dropping for the first time since Eli had met him. But you're not that animal anymore. You haven't been that animal for years. Lucas helped you find yourself again. He loved you through the worst of it. And I know. Eli's voice broke. I know you were trying to protect yourself this morning. I know you didn't mean to hurt anyone. The dog stopped retreating. His body trembled with the effort of containing whatever war was raging inside him. The blood had dried on his muzzle, a stark reminder of the violence he was capable of. But beneath the surface, Eli could see it. The struggle. The desperate attempt to hold on to the identity that Lucas had given him. Eli set down the vial and held out his empty hands. I'm not going to hurt you, Shadow. I'm not going to abandon you. Whatever they made you, whatever you've done, you're still in there. And I'm going to help you find your way back. Rex took one step forward, then another. Then he collapsed. His legs gave out beneath him, and he crumpled to the ground with a sound that was half whimper, half groan. His body shook with tremors that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than muscle and bone. Eli dropped to his knees beside him. The dog did not growl, did not flinch. He simply lay there, broken and exhausted, as if the effort of fighting his own nature had finally depleted every reserve he had. I've got you, Eli whispered. I've got you, boy. Rest now. We'll figure the rest out together. The sun rose over the Texas plains, casting long shadows across the scene. Man and dog, united by shared trauma and stubborn hope, suspended between destruction and salvation. But the clock was still ticking. 2 days remained before the DOD returned, and somewhere in a government office, men in suits were preparing for a confrontation that would determine Rex's fate once and for all. Because they were not coming to recover an asset. They were coming to eliminate evidence of a program that was never supposed to exist. Eli did not sleep. He sat in the dirt beside Rex throughout the night, his back against the storage shed wall, his eyes fixed on the stars that wheeled overhead. The dog lay curled at his feet, exhausted but unable to fully rest. Every few minutes, a tremor would ripple through his body, and his paws would twitch as if running from something in his dreams. The vial of medication sat in Eli's pocket, a weight that felt far heavier than its physical mass. He had photographed the label, the crate, everything he could find. Evidence of Project Cerberus. Evidence of what the military had done to these animals in the name of national security. But evidence meant nothing if no one was willing to listen. His phone had buzzed 3 times during the night. Calls from a blocked number that he did not answer. A text message from Marcus asking if he was still on the property. And another text, this one from Maya, sent at midnight. "Are you okay, Dad? Mom says you're on some kind of mission. I'm worried about you." He had typed and deleted a dozen responses before finally settling on, "I'm okay, baby girl. Just helping a friend. I'll explain everything soon. I love you." Her reply came immediately, "I love you too." Those 4 words kept him anchored through the darkest hours. As dawn approached, Rex stirred. The dog lifted his head, blinking in the gray light, and for a long moment simply stared at Eli, as if trying to remember how they had ended up here together. Then his tail moved, a single wag, hesitant, uncertain, but unmistakably intentional. "Good morning," Eli said softly. Rex did not growl. He did not retreat. He simply lay, his head back down on his paws, and watched Eli with eyes that had lost some of their coldness. The progress felt impossibly fragile, like holding a soap bubble that could burst at any moment. Jerome's blood still stained the ground near the feed shed. The threat of the DOD still loomed. Nothing had been solved. But something had shifted. Eli reached into his backpack and pulled out the military harness again. Rex's ears pricked forward. The trembling returned to his body, but this time it was different. This time it looked less like fear and more like anticipation. "I think Lucas would want you to have this," Eli said. "I think he'd want you to remember who you were before they hurt you. Before any of this started." He laid the harness in the dirt between them. Rex stared at it for a long moment. Then slowly, he crawled forward on his belly. His nose touched the worn canvas, breathing in the faded scent of the man who had saved him from himself once before. When Eli gently lifted the harness and slipped it over Rex's head, the dog did not resist. The transformation was subtle but undeniable. Something in Rex's posture changed. His spine straightened. His head lifted. The harness settled against his chest like armor, like identity, like a reminder of better days. "There you are," Eli whispered. "There's my shadow." Marcus found them 2 hours later. The foreman approached cautiously, his hand resting on the pistol at his hip, clearly prepared for the worst. But what he found was not the monster he expected. Rex sat beside Eli in the morning sun, the military harness visible against his dark fur. He watched Marcus approach with alertness, but not aggression. When the foreman stopped 10 feet away, the dog's tail wagged once. "I'll be damned," Marcus said. "He's still in there," Eli replied. "He was always in there. Someone just had to believe it enough to help him find the way out." Marcus shook his head slowly, wonder breaking through his weathered features. "What about Jerome? That boy's family is threatening to sue. County sheriff called me this morning asking questions I don't have answers to." "How is he?" 18 stitches. No nerve damage, thank God. Doctors say he'll heal clean. But the trauma..." Marcus trailed off. "That kind of thing stays with a person." Eli nodded. He knew better than most how trauma could linger, could reshape a life from the inside out. "I want to talk to Jerome, explain what happened, why Rex reacted the way he did. You think that'll help?" "I think the truth usually does, given enough time." Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying the pair before him, the broken veterinarian and the broken dog, somehow less broken when they were together. "Those government men are coming back tomorrow," he finally said. "I spoke to my lawyer this morning. Whatever paperwork they have, it's bulletproof. Federal authority trumps county jurisdiction. They're taking that dog one way or another." The words landed like stones in still water. Rex seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere. He pressed closer to Eli's leg, a gesture that would have been impossible just days ago. The trust between them had grown roots overnight, nourished by shared vigil and mutual understanding. "Then I have one day to make sure they never get the chance," Eli said. "What are you going to do?" Eli pulled out his phone and opened the photos he had taken the night before. The vial, the crate, the documentation of Project Cerberus with Lucas Hawk's name stamped across it. "I'm going to tell the world what they did. Every news outlet, every animal rights organization, every congressman who ever claimed to care about veterans and the dogs who served beside them. By this time tomorrow, Project Cerberus will be headline news." Marcus let out a low whistle. "You're going to war with the Department of Defense?" "No." Eli looked down at Rex, at the trust shining in those dark eyes. "I'm going to war for him. There's a difference." The hours that followed were a blur of phone calls and emails. Eli contacted journalists he had known from his military days. He reached out to veteran advocacy groups who had helped him during his own darkest periods. He sent the photographs to everyone who might listen, with a message that told the truth plainly and without embellishment. The government tortured dogs. They created weapons out of loyal animals, and now they're trying to destroy the evidence. The responses started trickling in by late afternoon. A reporter from a major network wanted to interview him. An animal welfare organization offered legal support. A retired general who had opposed Project Cerberus from the beginning called personally to offer whatever help he could provide. The story was spreading. Rex spent the day beside Eli, watching the flurry of activity with quiet attention. He ate for the first time in 48 hours, accepting food directly from Eli's hand. He allowed Eli to check his wounds and apply antiseptic to a scratch on his paw. Small surrenders that represented enormous victories. As the sun began to set on their second-to-last day, Eli sat on the porch of the ranch house with Rex at his feet. The dog had not left his side in 12 hours. "Tomorrow's going to be hard," Eli said quietly. "They're going to come with legal authority and probably armed guards. They're going to try to take you away." Rex's ears pricked forward. "But I need you to understand something, Shadow. Whatever happens, you're not alone anymore. You're not that weapon they tried to create. You're not the monster everyone was afraid of. You're a good dog who loved a good man, and that love didn't die when Lucas did." The dog lifted his head and pressed his nose against Eli's palm. It just found someone else to carry it. The moment stretched, golden and fragile, as the Texas sun painted the sky in shades of fire and amber. For just a breath, everything was perfect. Man and dog, healed and healing, ready to face whatever came next. Then Eli's phone buzzed with a message that changed everything. It was from the retired general. 3 words that sent ice through Eli's veins. "They're coming tonight." The DoD had gotten wind of the media campaign. They were moving up their timeline. Armed men were already en route to the ranch, authorized to use whatever force necessary to retrieve the asset. Eli looked down at Rex. Rex looked back with complete trust. And in that moment, both of them understood that the final test had arrived far sooner than anyone expected. Headlights cut through the darkness like knives. 3 vehicles, government plates, moving fast down the ranch's private road, kicking up dust that glowed white in their beams. The rumble of engines shattered the peaceful Texas night. Eli stood at the entrance to the corral, Rex pressed against his leg. The dog wore Lucas's harness, the brass buckles glinting in the moonlight. His body was tense, every muscle coiled for action, but he did not growl. He waited. Marcus emerged from the ranch house with his rifle, positioning himself on the porch. Behind him, Darnell and 2 other hands spread out across the property, creating a perimeter that felt both defiant and futile against federal authority. The vehicles screeched to a halt. Doors opened. Men in tactical gear poured out, their weapons raised but not yet aimed. The 2 agents from before stepped forward, flanked by a squad of soldiers whose body armor bore no identifying insignia. "Dr. Cross," the tall agent called out, "you've made this significantly more complicated than it needed to be. Your program tortured animals for military gain." Eli replied, his voice carrying across the still night air. "Then abandoned them when the experiment failed. The world deserves to know. The world will know whatever we decide to tell them. National security supersedes your little media campaign." The shorter agent gestured toward Rex. "Step away from the asset, Doctor. This doesn't have to end badly." Eli did not move. Rex did not move. The standoff stretched across seconds that felt like hours. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. The sound was answered by another and another, until the night was filled with their chorus. Rex's ears swiveled toward the sound. Something passed across his face. Recognition, maybe, or memory. Wolves calling to wolves, pack animals reaching out across the darkness to remind each other that they were not alone. "You can't have him," Eli said simply. "We have federal authority. You have paperwork that proves you committed war crimes against innocent animals. You really want that entered into evidence? You want a judge asking questions about what else Project Cerberus involved?" The agents exchanged glances. Eli pressed his advantage. "I served 8 years treating your dogs. I know what happens when these programs go wrong. I know about the handler in Kabul who was killed by his own animal. I know about the dogs that had to be euthanized because they couldn't tell friend from enemy anymore. And I know that Shadow here was supposed to be destroyed along with the rest of them." The tall agent's jaw tightened. "You're guessing." "I'm not guessing about the news crews that will be here at dawn, or the congressional inquiry that's already being scheduled, or the veteran advocacy groups who are preparing to make this their signature cause." Eli took a step forward, putting himself between Rex and the tactical team. "You can take this dog tonight, but tomorrow his face will be on every screen in America. And the story you'll be telling is how the Department of Defense sent armed soldiers to kidnap a grieving veteran's last connection to his fallen handler." Silence. The soldiers shifted uncomfortably. These were men who had signed up to defend their country, not to confiscate broken dogs from civilian ranches in the middle of the night. The shorter agent spoke quietly into his radio, a tense conversation that Eli could not hear. Then the tall agent nodded once. "Stand down," he ordered his team. The soldiers lowered their weapons, visible relief crossing several faces. The tension that had gripped the ranch like a fist slowly began to release. "This isn't over," the agent said to Eli. "You've made powerful enemies tonight." "I made those enemies the moment I put on a uniform," Eli replied. "At least this time, I'm fighting for something worth the cost." The agents turned and walked back toward their vehicles. The soldiers followed, climbing into the trucks with the mechanical efficiency of men who followed orders, regardless of personal feelings. The engines roared to life. The headlights swung away from the ranch. The convoy disappeared down the private road, leaving nothing but settling dust and the fading sound of tires on gravel. Eli's legs nearly gave out beneath him. He sank to one knee, his hand finding Rex's head almost by instinct. The dog pressed against him, solid and warm, a living anchor in the aftermath of what had nearly been disaster. "We did it," Eli breathed. "We actually did it." Rex's tail wagged slowly, rhythmically, a metronome counting out the beats of a heart that had remembered how to hope. Marcus approached from the porch, his rifle still in hand but pointing at the ground. His weathered face was slack with disbelief. "You just stared down the federal government," he said. "Over a dog." Eli looked up at him. "Over a friend." The foreman shook his head slowly, but a smile was breaking through his shock. "I've owned this ranch 31 years. Thought I'd seen everything. Clearly I was wrong." Darnell walked over, his expression complicated. The anger from Jerome's attack was still there, but something else had joined it. Respect, maybe, or at least the beginning of understanding. "Kid called from the hospital," he said. "Saw what you're doing on the news. Said to tell you." He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "Said to tell you he forgives the dog. Said anyone who fought that hard to save an animal must understand something the rest of us don't." Eli closed his eyes against the wave of emotion. Jerome's forgiveness was a gift he had not expected and did not feel he deserved. But he would carry it with him, add it to the collection of grace notes that had made this journey possible. "Thank you," he managed. Rex lay down in the dirt beside Eli, his head resting on his paws, his eyes finally peaceful. The military harness rose and fell with each breath. For the first time since Lucas Hawk died, Shadow looked like he might actually sleep without nightmares. The crisis had passed. The immediate threat was neutralized. But as Eli sat in the moonlit corral with a dog who had become far more than a patient, he knew this was not the end. It was a beginning. And the story that would unfold from this moment would touch lives in ways that neither man nor animal could possibly imagine. 6 months later, the ranch looked different. The corral where Rex had paced like a caged tiger was gone, replaced by an open pasture where half a dozen dogs ran free under the Texas sun. German shepherds, Belgian Malinois, Dutch shepherds, all of them former military working dogs, all of them broken in ways that traditional rescue programs could not address. Eli had named it the Shadow Project. The building that once served as a storage shed had been transformed into a veterinary clinic, equipped with everything needed to treat animals carrying the invisible wounds of war. A larger structure was under construction nearby, funded by donations that had poured in after the story of Rex and the midnight standoff went viral. Marcus stood on his porch, watching Eli work with a new arrival. The The Belgian Malinois was named Storm, discharged after losing a leg to an IED in Syria. Her handler had taken his own life 3 months after returning home, and Storm had been passed between shelters ever since, too traumatized to be adopted by a normal family. Rex lay in the shade of the old oak tree, observing. His transformation over the past 6 months had been nothing short of miraculous. The wild aggression that once defined him had mellowed into watchful protectiveness. He moved through the ranch with purpose now, greeting new arrivals with calm authority, showing them by example that this place was different, safe. He had become a healer in his own right. Eli finished the session with Storm and walked over to join Rex beneath the tree. The dog's tail wagged as he approached, that same slow rhythm that had first appeared on the night they faced down the government together. "Another good day," Eli said, settling into the grass beside him. Rex laid his head in Eli's lap. This simple gesture, this act of complete trust, never failed to move Eli to his core. 6 months ago, this dog would have torn out his throat rather than allow such vulnerability. Now, he sought it out like a blessing. Marcus wandered over, 2 bottles of cold water in his hands. He passed one to Eli and sat down on a nearby stump. "Got another call today," the foreman said. "Army base in Georgia. They've got 3 dogs they don't know what to do with. Handlers killed in a training accident. Dogs are too bonded to their team to function with new partners. When can they get here?" "End of the month, if you've got space." Eli looked around at the expanding facility. The new building would double their capacity. Applications from volunteers had been coming in faster than they could process them. Donations kept the lights on, and then some. "We'll make space," he said. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "Dad, I showed my class the video of Rex meeting the new puppies. Everyone cried, even Tommy, who says he hates dogs. Can I come visit next weekend?" Eli smiled and typed back, already counting the days. The relationship with his daughter had healed alongside everything else. She visited every other weekend now, helping socialize the dogs and learning more about veterinary medicine than any 12-year-old probably should. Denise had even started coming sometimes, her anger at Eli's withdrawal slowly transforming into something that might one day become friendship again. Broken things could be mended. That was the lesson Rex had taught him, not through words, but through the simple act of surviving, of choosing trust over fear, connection over isolation, love over the emptiness that grief had carved into both their hearts. Eli reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn photograph. Lucas Hawk in his wheelchair, Shadow's head in his lap, both of them laughing in the golden light of a Texas afternoon. He had framed a copy for the clinic's lobby, alongside a plaque that read, "In memory of Sergeant Lucas Hawk, who understood that loyalty never dies." Rex lifted his head, as if sensing the shift in Eli's mood. "He saved you first," Eli said softly. "I just helped you remember." The dog's eyes held depths of understanding that no scientific study could explain. Whatever had passed between them over these months transcended the ordinary bond between human and animal. They had walked through fire together, emerged on the other side, changed in ways that neither could fully articulate. Partners, brothers, survivors. "Dr. Cross," a voice called from the clinic. Eli looked up to see one of the volunteers waving from the doorway. "The news crew is here for the interview." The congressional investigation into Project Cerberus had resulted in sweeping reforms to military working dog programs, new protocols for handler transitions, better mental health support for animals showing signs of trauma, and an official apology from the Department of Defense, delivered by a red-faced general who had once signed off on the very experiments that created Rex. The story had touched something deep in the American consciousness. People who had never owned a dog found themselves weeping at Rex's transformation. Veterans who struggled with their own invisible wounds reached out, sharing how the Shadow Project had given them hope. Donations came from every corner of the country, from millionaires and from children who sent their allowance money with crayon-drawn pictures of German shepherds. Eli had never intended to become a public figure. He had come to Texas expecting to save one dog and find some measure of peace for his own troubled soul. Instead, he had sparked a movement. "Duty calls," Marcus said with a wry smile. Eli stood and brushed the grass from his jeans. Rex rose with him, falling into step at his side as naturally as breathing. They walked toward the clinic together, man and dog, their shadows stretching long across the Texas earth. The afternoon sun painted everything in shades of gold and amber, the same colors that had witnessed their first meeting in this very corral. At the doorway, Eli paused. He looked down at Rex. The dog looked back with eyes that had seen war and loss and betrayal, and had somehow found the strength to believe again. "Thank you," Eli said, "for everything." Rex's tail wagged once. Then he turned and walked into the clinic ahead of Eli, ready to face whatever came next with the steady courage of a soldier who had finally found his way home. The interview went well. The story would air that weekend, reaching millions more people. More dogs would be saved. More handlers would be honored. The legacy of Lucas Hawk would continue to grow. But the true ending of this story could not be captured by cameras or told in headlines. It lived in the quiet moments, in the shared silences between a broken man and a broken dog who had somehow made each other whole. In the daily miracle of Rex greeting new arrivals with patience instead of violence. In the letters Eli received from families whose loved ones had finally found peace. In the simple, profound truth that nobody could tame the wild German shepherd because taming was never what he needed. What he needed was understanding. What he needed was patience. What he needed was someone willing to see past the fury to the grief beneath, and to love him anyway. Dr. Elias Cross came to Texas to keep a promise to a dead friend. He stayed because he discovered something far more valuable than redemption. He discovered that the strongest bonds are forged not in moments of triumph, but in moments of shared brokenness. That healing is never a straight line. That loyalty, true loyalty, survives death and distance and every attempt to destroy it. Rex taught him that. And in return, Eli gave Rex something the dog had not experienced since Lucas Hawk drew his last breath. A reason to believe that tomorrow would be better than today. As the sun set over the Shadow Project, painting the Texas sky in colors that defied description, man and dog stood together on the porch. They did not need words. They never had. They simply watched the light fade, grateful for each other, ready for whatever came next. Because in the end, it was never really about taming the wild German shepherd. It was about setting him free. And that is a story worth remembering. If this journey touched your heart, if Rex and Eli's story reminded you of the healing power of patience and unconditional love, then do not let it end here. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another story that inspires, transforms, and reminds us all that broken things can be beautiful again. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Drop a comment below and tell us about a time when loyalty or love helped you heal from something you thought would break you forever. And if you have your own story of redemption, whether it involves an animal, a friend, or simply the courage to keep going when everything fell apart, we want to hear it. Because every story matters, every healing counts, and together, we can prove that the world still has room for miracles. Until next time, remember the lesson that a wild German shepherd named Shadow taught a broken veterinarian named Eli. Sometimes the ones who seem most dangerous are simply the ones who have been hurt the deepest. And sometimes, the unexpected thing that saves them is nothing more and nothing less than someone who refuses to give up.